Okay, so welcome back to our series on Sichos HaRan b'siyata d'shmaya. Thank you to everybody for joining. It's a privilege to learn with you and to see you all here. Thank you. And let's jump back into our learning with Hashem's help to Sichos HaRan Ayin Hey. Sichos HaRan Ayin Hey. This Erev Lag BaOmer. What a privilege. And we're even going to get a chance to learn a little bit, I think, from the Zohar Kadosh in the context of today's shiur, so that works out particularly nicely. And Sichos HaRan Ayin Hey and Sichos HaRan Ayin Vav, the 75th and 76th teachings in Sichos HaRan, are seen as being the primary teachings in this sefer on tefillah and on Torah, respectively. Sichos HaRan Ayin Vav, which we'll see at length, goes through Rebbe Nachman's Derech HaLimud, Rebbe Nachman's approach toward learning Torah, which is very unique and very specific. And Sichos HaRan Ayin Hey, which is what we're up to now, is Rebbe Nachman's Sicha on Tefillah. Now, there are many Sichas in Sichos HaRan which talk about Tefillah. We've learned many of those together, but over here, this is like a very lengthy Sicha, not a very lengthy Sicha, but a decently lengthy Sicha, and many of the other things that we've said about tefillah, that we've learned about tefillah, are incorporated in this particular teaching as well. So as you see, 75a, Ayin Hey, number one, is that we're going to have a couple of shiurim on Sichos HaRan Ayin Hey because of its length and because we want to really get into every detail. So we'll get to Sichos HaRan Ayin Vav, Be'ezus Hashem, when we finish with this Sicha that we have before us now. So let's dive into it. So Rebbe Nachman says like this, Zechus Yagan Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael Amen. Says the Rebbe, Be'inyan tefillah, with regard to davening, Siper Rabbeinu Zal Imanu Harbe. Says Rebbe Nachman, recording the teachings of Rebbe Nachman in the Sefer, he says Rebbe Nachman spoke a lot about davening, a lot about tefillah. It's Yadua that Rebbe Nachman felt very connected to David HaMelech, David HaMelech's neshama being connected to the concept of the Ruach of Mashiach, Nishmas Hapenu, Ruach Hapenu, Mashiach Hashem, David Malka Mashiach, and Rebbe Nachman felt very connected to that spirit of a redemptive spirit. Like we learned, a spirit of redemption for the individual, to help each and every person, like Rebbe Nachman writes in the Akdama to Likutei Moharan, Leimar la'asurim tseu. Rebbe Nachman wanted to help us get out of our subjective galuyos, the personal exile that we can feel trapped in on whatever level. Rebbe Nachman wanted to say that we can get free, that we can become redeemed. So Rebbe Nachman felt very connected to that spirit of David HaMelech, and one of the features of that connection is the Rebbe's connection to tefillah. Rebbe Nachman said in Yiddish, Gar mein Zach is tefillah. He said, my whole thing is tefillah. This was Rebbe Nachman's inyan. He had a lot to say about learning also. He revealed many deep, glorious Torahs as well, but tefillah was his, so to speak, his expertise. So Rebbe Nachman spoke a lot about tefillah. V'hizer ma'od. And the first thing is, Rebbe Nachman says, he warned us, he guided us, lahachriach es atzmei lehispalel b'kavana gedola, to mamish push ourselves, to force ourselves, but to compel ourselves, lehispalel b'kavana gedola, to daven with tremendous kavana. Now, what does that mean? To daven with kavana. There are many different meanings of what this is. To daven with intention. There are many layers of intention. There are many different meanings to focusing on our tefillah. What exactly is it that we're focusing on? Are we focusing on the parish of the words, what the words mean? Are we focusing on the deeper meanings? Are we focusing on awareness of Hashem, to whom we're speaking? What does it mean, kavana? Says the Rebbe, simple. What the Gemara says and is recorded in the Poskim, Da'ainu, what this means is lekasher hamachshava el hadibor b'kesher ametz v'chazak, to bind our thought with the words that are coming out of our mouths, to be aware bechlal is the first level, that we're even davening, right? That we're speaking words to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is accomplished, says the Rebbe, very practical, very basic, sheyate oznai hetiv v'yishma mashu medaber b'tefillah, that a person should turn his or her ears very, very well to listen to the words that are coming out of our mouths. Very interesting thing. This is called kavana. To make sure that our capacity of hearing is connected with our capacity of speaking. We say a word out of our mouths, our ears hear it. To listen to what the mouth is doing, which is a pretty remarkable thing, right? Because usually when we're engaged in one sense, we're not engaged in perceiving that sense using another sense, right? If you're seeing something, so the ears are out of the picture. The eyes are seeing what they're seeing, and the ears will, if there's an accompanying sound, the ears will hear that, right? We don't hear ourselves seeing. We don't smell ourselves hearing, right? To be aware of something that's going on in our inner world using one of our own senses, that's a remarkable thing. We're being mekasher, a part of ourselves, with another part of ourselves. That's an interesting and amazing phenomenon. To be able to observe yourself. To be able for me to observe myself. Which again, in the normal way of thinking, there's me and then there's the outside world. And I perceive the outside world. I engage with the outside world. But over here, I am using one of my senses that's ordinarily used to perceive the outside world, and I'm turning it inward. I'm focusing on something that I am doing, which is an intensely personal experience. I am preoccupied with my own expressivity, with my own identity, with my own personality. Says the Rebbe, that's a very, very important thing with tefillah. To listen very deeply to your own words. V'zeh ikar tefillah b'kavana, says the Rebbe, this is the primary meaning of davening with kavana. To make sure that our ears are listening to the words that are coming out of our mouths. Now, on a pragmatic, practical level, we understand this, right? We understand this. This is the way to focus on my tefillah, on my davening, because my ear, if I'm consciously listening to myself speaking, so I'm going to be really conscious and aware that I'm davening, and I'm going to listen to the words, and I'm going to be thinking of the words. That makes sense on a simple level. But maybe over here we could throw in a little bit of a deeper pshat as well, a deeper havana, a deeper understanding. The premise of tefillah is to believe in tefillah. To believe in davening. To believe that davening matters, that davening works. To believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is listening to our tefillah. And the premise of listening, of believing in tefillah is believing in ourselves. Believing that we are worth listening to. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares to listen to us. It begins with value, with self-worth. A concept we've been speaking a lot about in the recent shiur. Begins with our own bringing a sense of mattering, of really believing in ourselves, believing in the worth of our tefillos. So the Rebbe says, well, look at what Chazal tell you about how to have kavana. It begins with caring enough about something you're doing to pay attention to it, instead of constantly using our ears to listen to what everybody else is saying under the assumption that there's far more value in what they're saying than what I could ever say. Says the Rebbe, no. Turn your ears to listen to your own words. Listen to how sweet they are. Listen to how fascinating they are. Listen to how meaningful they are. There's what to keep your ears occupied. With your very own words, without the need to always be listening to someone else. Value your own tefillah. Pay attention to your own tefillah. This is the yesod, the foundation for actually having kavanah during davening, because then this means that my davening matters. My davening matters. V'haraya, I'm listening to it. I care about it. And if I'm caring about it, so then I'm going to invest in it the effort that's required to make sure that it's a tefillah mamash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to care about and listen to very intently. So this is a very beautiful thing, to listen to ourselves and to create a space within our own world, within our own perceptibility, to listen to the words that are coming out of our own mouths. Says the Rebbe, v'zeh ikar tefillah b'kavana. And it's also so simple, which is the next point. There's no big hasagas, no big avodah. Just literally, you're davening, use your ears to listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth. Says Rebbe Nachman further, Rebbe Nachman did not tell his followers to daven with the Kabbalistic intentions of the Arizal. Arizal revealed many beautiful intentions, Kavvanos, based on Kabbalah, to understand what the nekudas, as we're going to see from the Meor VaShemesh in a minute, what the nekudas of this particular name of Hashem, when we see it, as it relates to the bracha that it's found in, and to have kavanah, to have intention, to focus on different midas of Hashem and different letters of Hashem and permutations of Hashem's name while we're davening. So that could be very sophisticated, and a person can get wrapped up in all the kavanas and all the different ideas and all the different elements that he needs to have in mind. And this is the way that the Mekubalim daven, whether the Mekubalim from the Beis Medrash of the Arizal, or later on the Rashash famously wrote a Siddur Rashash with many, many different kavanas. And his Beis Medrash was very occupied or preoccupied with davening with those kavanas and meditating with those kavanas. But this was not Rebbe Nachman's way. He would not tell his followers to daven with these kavanas, even though he would tell certain of his followers to learn the writings of the Arizal. He wanted them to study the works of the Arizal, but not to daven with those kavanas. He can learn the kavanas, but when it comes to davening, says the Rebbe, simple. Va'amar, and he said, she'ikr shleimus hatfila, the primary shleimus, the fulfillment, the completion of tefillah, the pinnacle of tefillah, is Baruch Ata Hashem Kipshuta. So on a very simple level, the simplest of levels. Baruch Ata Hashem. Blessed are you, Hashem, or Hashem, you are the source of blessing, different understandings. Simple, simple, simple. V'zeh ikar kavanas hatfila, and this, says Rebbe Nachman, is what our main intention should be. Sheyechaben perish hamilos. Here he adds on another element to learn the explanation of the words. V'yishma heitiv mashu omer, and listen again, activate our ears. And this again assumes that we're davening loud enough for our ears to be hearing it. Shemana Esrei is a different story, but at least the rest of davening, we should daven audibly enough so that our ears should be able to listen and connect with that sense, with that capacity that we have of speech, the words that are coming out of our mouths. Perish hamilas, being mekasher our machshava to our dibor, and listening to the words that are coming out of our mouths. This is the ideal of kavanah. Without any deep kavanas and hasagas and avodas, the words, their meaning, listening to them, valuing our tefillah, thinking about the words that we're saying on a simple level. This is what Rebbe Nachman wanted. Tefillah al pi pshat. Just the simple, simple, simple way of davening. And I have the privilege of davening most mornings, almost every morning, next to a bacher in one of the local yeshivas over here. And I commended him the other day on this, because his hanhaga is he sits with a regular sitter that he davens from, just the Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew, and right next to that sitter, he has the Hebrew English. And I noticed that when he comes to a word or a phrase that either he doesn't know what the meaning is or he forgot, he looks it up during davening, during Shemana Esrei, and he looks up the English that he could be mechaven perish hamilas. And I told him how ahead he is. How many people could go through their whole lives davening Shemana Esrei and they really don't know what the words mean, what the actual words mean. Right? So how we're not giving ourselves a chance. How do we think we should have kavanah when we're just rattling off, just words that have mumbo jumbo, has no meaning to us? So this is a good eitzah. You could daven with a sitter, and you could daven. Actually, we have a fellow member of the minyan on our Zoom, Heliger Biasi, right? So there's a bacher that sits next to me. This is what he does. He sits with his Hebrew English, and he looks it up, which is a very beautiful anhaga to do. Very beautiful, right? So this is what it is. Just mamish, tefillah, perish hamilas, simple. So let's take a look at some of the sources on this, and we'll get back to finishing this part of the piece that I wanted to get through today, and then next week we'll carry on Be'ezras Hashem with this sicha, Ayin Hey. Let's take a look at this Torah, Likutei Moharan Tinyana Kuf Chaf. At the very, very end of Likutei Moharan, second volume, all the way at the end, there are some short teachings on tefillah, and this is one of them, a related teaching. Echad me'anshei shlamenu siper li. Says Rebbe Nachman, who's recording this teaching, one of our anshei shlamenu, meaning our chevra from among the Hasidim, told me, sheyimedaber im Rabbeinu zal ba'avodas Hashem kedarkai. He was talking to the Rebbe about serving Hashem, different layers and levels and perceptions and madregas. Ve'even Rabbeinu zal, and Rebbe Nachman understood from what he was saying, is that shu oisik sas lechaben kavanas b'tfilasai. It slipped out, I guess, or he just told Rebbe Nachman he didn't know what a shita on it was, and he told him that he's using the Kavvanos of the Arizal to daven. V'hikpid alav Rabbeinu Zal ma'oid. And he says Rebbe Nachman got very makbid about it. He was very, very specific, and he got a little bit upset at him. And he told him, he must stop doing this immediately. Kavvanos. Rebbe Nachman said, do not daven with the Kavvanos of the Arizal, just to say the words, just the pshat. And again, you have to understand, Rebbe Nachman understood the importance of the Kavvanos of the Ari. Right? Rebbe Nachman has Torahs where he goes al pi the Kavvanos of the Arizal in many places, and Reb Nosson reveals in the Kutei Halachas that every Torah is based on Kavvanos of the Arizal. He says all the Kisvei Ari are in the Kutei HaRan. It's all there. It's built on the Torah of the Arizal, which is built on the Torah of Rebbe Shimon. So this is not someone who Chas v'Shalom doesn't believe in Kabbalah, doesn't believe in this stuff, and says just daven. It's not enough for you just to daven the actual words that Anshe Knesset Gedolah wrote for us in the Siddur. No, Rebbe Nachman understood all of this, but he also understood the secret of pshitos, of tmimus. And that's why, if you remember the lashon that we learned in the beginning of the piece, Rebbe Nachman says, this is the ikar shleimus hatfila. Tefillah has a shleimus. Tmimus means simplicity, but it also milashon tam v'nishlam, right? You see at the end of a sefer, tam v'nishlam, it's completed. Tmimus means complete. Shleimus means complete. Just to say the words, simple, simple, simple. There's a shleimus there. There's a sense of completion there. Just to say things on a very basic, simple level. The Rebbe understood. He had a hasaga in pshitos. He understood how great simplicity was. How incredibly sophisticated simplicity is. Just to be a simple yid is not simple. Not simple. Afal right? And so he writes in parentheses, Afal pi shezeh ish lamad kisvei ariza al pi pekudasa. This guy was this tzaddik, I'm sure, was one of the people that was learning the kisvei arizal because Rebbe Nachman told him to do that. So he was ra'oi, he was fitting. Rebbe Nachman told him to learn the Kavvanos, but Afal pi kein loy ratza sheyispalem Kavvanos klal. Rebbe Nachman was not happy with people davening with the Kavvanos of the Arizal. And then Rebbe Nachman added, if a person is not fitting to do this, so then when he davens with the Kavvanos of the Arizal, it's almost like magic. It's almost like forcing things to happen, and it's not a good thing. About Kishav it says, you should not learn to do these things. The Gemara says, right? You can learn Kishav just to be able to know what it is, but Chas v'Shalom not to do it. In Kavvanos lahavdil, he says for certain people the same applies. Lahavdil, obviously, it's very different to the Kavvanos of the Arizal, the Kabbalistic intentions of davening, of praying with the Kabbalistic understandings of the tzaddik, the Arizal. We learn it to learn it because it's Torah. But not to apply it. And he throws in Misha Ina Roy Lazeh. So it could be that there are certain people that Rebbe Nachman was okay with davening in such a way, in a very sophisticated, mystical way. But for the regular Hamayin Am, for regular people, just to say the words. Va'amar, and he said, Ki ikra tefillah, hi dveikus la Hashem Yisbarach. What tefillah is, again, on the most simple of levels, Hashem is our Father, and we are His child. And tefillah gives us the opportunity for relationship. That's it. It gives us the opportunity to fortify the relationship, just like if a child needs something from their father or from their mother, and they come and they ask. There's the opportunity for a bond. There's the opportunity for connection. That's what tefillah is. Very simply, the opportunity for us as Jews to connect to Hashem, our source, our Father in heaven. And he says, because this is the case, he says, really, it would have been better, says Rebbe Nachman, to just daven in English, or to daven in whatever language you're most comfortable with or familiar or fluent in. It's much more real. It's much more experiential to really feel when you say in your own words. Otherwise, it's like some foreign thing. It becomes a ritual, right? But if you actually use words to talk to Hashem like you talk to anybody, so the heart is closer to the words, and of course that's where Rebbe Nachman advises us to add on to the 3 compulsory tefillos every day, and to daven with our own words, and that's called hispodidus, of course. Then there's an even stronger connection on a very practical level, me connecting to him. But once the Anshe Knesses Hagdola came and they instituted for us the words of our siddur, like the Rambam says, why did they do this? Is because people just lost the ability to come up with original prayers every day. It just wasn't happening. So Anshe Knesset Hagdola said, we'll standardize things. And now every person has a siddur, and so even if you don't have the words, you have the words. So he says, once the Anshe Knesset Hagdola gave us the siddur, so then we have the obligation of obviously to daven with those words. But don't forget the main thing. That's what the Rebbe always wanted to remind us. Don't take your eye off the ball. What is this be'emes? The main thing is dveikus. The main thing is on a basic, simple level. We need things in life. We come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we ask Him for those things. That's the main thing. That's what tefillah is. Dveikus. Spend time with Hashem every day. The main thing is just to understand the words on their simple level. Shezehu ikar tefillah. This is the primary purpose of tefillah in the first place. Not some magical incantation formula. That's already too sophisticated. Simple. We all need things. We all need things in our life. We all need things. We come to tefillah and Anshe Knesset Hagdola put all of the needs that we might have into Shemona Esrei, into Psukei de Zimra, all the praise that we want to sing, all the thanks we want to give, all the things we want to ask for. So it's very simple. Hashem is real. And He's real not as some mysterious being, just this divine concept. Hashem is real, ki'ilu, with a personality. He's our melech. He's our av. And He wants us to relate to Him as such. To come to Him and to say, Master of heaven and earth, I know you're the infinite one, and you're beyond hasaga, and you're unfathomable in every way, and you're rachik, you're removed from me and my experience in every way. But when I come to daven and I come to tefillah, I'm really just coming to spend some time with you. I'm coming to spend time with you because you're my Father. Simple words. That's the main thing. Simple words. Hashem, I need you for everything. I believe in my tefillah. I believe that you're listening. I believe that you care. And I believe that you help for everything. Like Rebbe Nachman says in another place, we say in Ashrei, Toiv Hashem lakol, which on a simple level means Hashem is good to everyone, to all. Toiv Hashem lakol. For Rebbe Nachman says it means something else too. Not just that Hashem is good to all, but that Hashem is good for everything. Hashem is an all-purpose divinity. There's nothing Hashem is not good for. There's nothing that you have in your life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't the perfect material to mend that particular fracture, that particular gap. Toiv Hashem lakol. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu good for? He's good for everything. Everything you need. We need Him. Toiv Hashem lakol. So everything that we need, we bring Hashem into it. We make space for Hashem in our lives. We make Him real by talking to Him without highfalutin ideas. Straight. Just straight. Mamish straight. And that says Rebbe Nachman, that's the deepest. That's maybe even deeper than the Kavvanos of the Arizal. It's the deepest. That's the deepest, as we'll see. We get close to Hashem. We build on this relationship. We make Him real. We make Him a part of our lives. Is there anything deeper than that? Even though it seems so simple, or specifically because it seems so simple, and it is, it's the deepest. It's tmimus. It's shleimus. If a person lives in Eretz Yisrael and he's always speaking Lashon HaKodesh, such a person doesn't need to really put energy into thinking about the meaning of the words because he knows what the words mean, right? He knows the meaning. right? So for this person, he should be extra careful to just listen to the sound of the words coming out of his mouth, to listen to them, to be curious about them, to be observant of them, to watch them, to hear them, to take interest in them. Zehu ikar kavvanos tefillah. This for him is the main kavanah of tefillah. And then he says, and this is what we're coming to, he says, by the greatest of all tzaddikim, etzlam, for them, kol hakavana shel Arizal heim perish amilos. He says all the big ideas of the Arizal and all the deep kavanas and all the specific Kabbalistic nuances and inflections and different things to think about and have in mind and meditate on, heim perish amilos. At the end of the day, it all comes back to what the words actually mean. So what the words actually mean. Shebe perish amilos shalahem klulin kala kavanas. So when they looked at the simple meaning of the words, that itself was all the kavanas of the Arizal. They understood how Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, they invested those kavanas into the words. It's not two separate things. So they happen to know how that is. We don't. But at the end of the day, says Rebbe Nachman, really we don't need anything other than Rifa'enu Hashem v'nei Rafe. I'm not feeling so good. V'nei Rafe, please heal me. That's the deepest. That's the most Kabbalistic thing you can do. It's just to daven simple Perish Hamilas. And I should have included in the source. I'm just remembering it now, but I'll tell it to you outside. So the Chavos HaTalmidim, the Piyasetz Rebbe, at the end, he has a section called Shloisha Ma'amarim, which we've quoted from in the past. We've learned a little bit from, I believe, in previous shiurim. Shloisha Ma'amarim is 3 discourses, very, very beautiful, Ma'amari Chasidus. And in one of those Ma'amarim, I think it's on tefillah, which makes sense. So he says over there the following. He says a mashal. He says if a person comes to a watchmaker and his watch is broken, and so he brings it to this workshop and he asks the guy to fix his watch, help him with the watch. So the watchmaker takes it, he opens it up, and he knows what's going on inside, all the different cogs and the gears and the wheels and the bands and everything that's going on inside a watch. And he sits there with his tweezers, whatever tools that they use, and he puts everything back into the place, and he closes it up. So he gives it back to this guy, and because his watch hadn't been working in some time, so he needs to set it. So what does he do when he needs to set the watch? He doesn't open it up and start to manipulate all the gears inside and make sure this one's moving and that one's moving that one and this one is working from this place and figuring out. He just takes the tiny pin on the side. Every watch is a little bit different, but most watches, you just pop it out a shtickle and you turn it. And by turning it, everything that needs to happen inside the intricacies of the watch is happening, even though he doesn't know how it works. You don't need to know how it works. You could use the same muscle for so much of technology. When we get into a car, we press the gas, and it goes. We don't know how it goes. Maybe some of us do, but the overwhelming majority of people that drive cars have not an inkling how this thing is actually happening, but they don't need to. They don't need to. It's been constructed in such a way that if you use it with its user-friendly interface, it works. It works. Even though the inner workings of how it works are incomprehensibly intricate and detailed and complicated. And if all of us would need to understand how cars work before working them, I dare say there would be many, many fewer cars on the roads, right? Because who has the brain space for that? Who has the talent for that? Who has the time for that? Baruch Hashem, things work. Breathing. If we had to understand how breathing worked before we could breathe, everyone would be dead. Right? No one understands how breathing works. We breathe. It works. Says the Piyasetz Rebbe, all of this is a mashal for the Kavvanos of tefillah and davening. He says, Anshe Knesset HaGedolah were the big watchmakers, or the car, mechanics, or producers. He says they put into tefillah all the different kavanos of how the tefillah is impacting Shamayim and it's drawing energies from all the different names of Hashem and all the different layers and levels and spheres and worlds and everything that's happening in every bracha. They put all of that in to the tefillah. So all you have to do is, it's not even a stick shift car. It's just automatic. All you need to do is open a siddur and say the words of Shemana Esrei with simple kavana. Which means, like Rebbe Nachman said, to be aware that you're davening, make sure that our ears are listening to the words that we're saying, and to try as best as we can to mean it on the simplest of levels. I'm coming to shul to spend time with Hashem, to connect to Hashem, to let Hashem in my life, to make it clear that I'm reliant on Hashem. That's it. Simple words. And that's us pressing the gas in the car, or that's us turning that little cog on the outside of the watch. Everything is working almost on its own. That's how the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah set up the Siddur. So we have to be aware that great things are happening. Maybe we'll get to the Madrega one day where we'll learn about those things. But when it comes to davening, said the Rebbe, simple, tmimus and pshitus. That's what Yiddishkeit is about. Just the simplicity of it. The simplicity of it. And that's that Torah from Likutei Moharan. Let's take a look at this fascinating, beautiful, mamash a beautiful teaching from the Meor VaShemesh. And the Meor VaShemesh, who was a Talmud of the Noam Elimelech, and he actually quotes his Rebbe over here in this piece. The Heilige Rav Kleinemos Kalman Epstein, I believe was his name, the Meor VaShemesh, the fourth generation of Chassidus. He says like this: Ha'inyan hu ki yesh kama v'kama anoshim shemespalelu mikavanos hashemos. He says there are many tzaddikim that are davening with the Kabbalistic intentions of the Arizal, with the Kavvanos Ha'ari. V'ulam b'daris ha'elu, he says, in our times, einat tzrichen lazeh, we don't need to do this anymore. So he's coming from a different angle. It's not that we shouldn't, because there's a better alternative for us, or like Rebbe Nachman says, it could be damaging if we're not ra'ui for it, which most of us aren't, or are in that category. Over here he comes from a different angle. He says maybe in earlier times they needed to, but in our times, he says, and he's probably referring to after the advent of the Baal Shem Tov, right, which changed many things, like the Baal Shem Tov taught, things are different. Now, why are things different? Listen to what he says. He says, I heard from my Rebbe, the Rebbe of Meilech of Lezhensk, the Heilige Noam Elimelech, Sha'amar, that he said, She'ein mispalel al pi Kavvanos. He says not to daven with the Kavvanos of the Arizal. So it wasn't just Rebbe Nachman. Other tzaddikim felt the same way. And he explained, listen to this, it's mamish so powerful, mamish powerful. He says, Mashem mispalel b'siddur ha'arizal. Why would somebody daven from that siddur of the Ari, that has all the Kavvanos of the Arizal? Why would somebody daven with the siddur Ari? Is because over there the names of Hashem are written very clearly, v'hu gadol, and very large, printed large, all the names of Hashem. Ulahavan adavar bar heitiv, and to understand this very deeply, hu kach. Hu kach. Lefi she'ikar kavanas Hashem is hu al pi nekudos. The primary understanding of the Kabbalistic understanding of the names of Hashem that we say in our tefillah has to do, without getting into the depth of this now, it has to do with the nekudos of those names. Even though we don't pronounce the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, when the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei has different nekudos, it refers to different spiritual energies in the spiritual realm. Without getting into the depth of that now. Doesn't mean that they pronounce the name Yud Kei Vav Kei Chas v'Shalom, or that they pronounce Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which is the name that we use instead of saying Yud Kei Vav Kei. They don't pronounce it any differently. But if you look, they can have the kavana of the different energies, the different nekudas that are printed in those siddurim. There are even siddurim that are used popularly today, called Masak Midvash, the Matok Midvash, or Daniel Frisch, right? And they also have over there, you can see different nekudas for the names. Right? This time you see Yud Kei Vav Kei, and it has kamatz under all the letters, and that's talking about the sphere of Keser, right? And that's that. And Visham, right? And sometimes Visham and Nikud Kach, and sometimes the name has a different akud that's all with a shva, right? Under all the letters, and that's Moira Inim Zeh, which is Gevura. Right? All the nekudas have what they are Moira on, what they hint to. So he says, but why would we be having kavanas in the shemas that have to do with the nekudas? Why would we have that in mind when we're saying Yud Kei Vav Kei? V'in Yedua mi Sifrei Kodesh, he says it's written from the Heilige Sfarim, from the holy works of Sfarim, Akdoshim Shanakudas Him Nefesh HaOisiyos, because the nekudas are the nefesh of the letters. Letters alone is comparable to a guf, to a body. If you just have letters on a page without any nekudas, and you don't know what the nekudas are, not like these words over here that I'm reading because I know what the nekudas are, but if you just have letters on a page and you have no idea what the nekudas are, it's a corpse because it can't move. You can't move from letter to letter if you don't know what the vowels are. You can't pronounce a word. You don't know, it doesn't move. It doesn't have a sound. It doesn't have a meaning. It's just corporeal, coarse, physical, so to speak, just bodies, right? But it has no spirit. So the nekudas are called the nefesh ha'osiyos. They're the soul of the osiyos. V'ata'amim, and if you have ta'amim, like for example, in the Torah we have trup, right? We have a different ways of reading the Torah, how to lane the Torah. V'hatagim, and the crowns on top of the letters, that's higher levels of the soul, ruach and neshama. That's already, the spirit is the ta'amim, and then the tagin, which is the highest part, the neshama of the letters, so to speak, is the crowns on top of the letters. So first we just have the letters, that's the body. And then we have nekudas, ta'amim, and tagim are the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the letters. Very fascinating. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the letters are the nekudas, which is the vowels, the ta'amim, which is the way that we lane the letters, and the tagim, which is the crowns of the letters. K'di'isa b'tikunim, as is brought in the Tikunei Zayar. So he says, umemela. So he says, think of it this way. We want the letters to move. And so we think we need to come to tefillah, and we have to be big mikubalim, and we have to read the names of Hashem and have the kavana for the nekudas in that name, and the tamim in that name, and the tagin in that name, and to bring the letters to life with nefesh, ruach, and neshama. But he says, once the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, kisha adam mesim nafshay v'ruchai v'nishmasai, when we show up to davening with our nefesh, which is related to maisa, just our davening, akiras v'sayim avi maisa, just the physical moving of our lips, and the heimotzais hapeh, the 5 parts of the mouth that contribute to speech. Nefesh. V'ruchai, and when we come with our dibor, with that functionality, the capacity of speaking, what that means for breath to become voice, that becomes words. V'nishmasai, which is connected to thinking. We bring our kavana into the tefillah. And we bind them all together by davening intentionally with kavana. So he says, good. You just activated all the Kabbalistic intentions that you could have possibly activated with having in mind all the Kavvanos of the Arizal, because you brought your tefillah to life. Not because you found the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of the letters in a Kabbalistic sense, but because you yourself serve as the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of these letters by davening them with passion, with consciousness, and with intentionality. You become the Kavvanos Ari. You are the Kabbalistic mystery. You don't need to have in mind the Kabbalistic mystery to bring the letters to life. You bring them to life. He says once the Baal Shem Tov came and showed how all the Kavvanos of the Arizal are wrapped up into the simple pshat of the meaning, like we saw from Rebbe Nachman, and more than that we are the embodiment of all the worlds, mi besari echse eloka, within ourselves, tselem elokim. We are all of those madregas that the Arizal spoke about. It's all taking place within us. That's what the Baal Shem Tov did, right? Vis-a-vis what the earlier Mekubalim did. They all wanted to bring earth up to heaven. But the Baal Shem Tov Mamish brought heaven down to earth. He showed how we have it within us. So he says, good, you become the Kavvanos of the Arizal. You bring your nefesh, ruach, and neshama into your tefillah, brings it to life. As kol Hashem sha'omer, whatever name of Hashem you're saying, b'chol nafshe v'ruchim and neshmasa, with all of you, with your action, with your speech, with your thought, fully activated, functional, at full capacity. In a natural way, you're already imbuing that name with its nekudas, it's tagin, and it's ta'amim. Hamoirim, which, like we said, which are related to nefesh, ruach, and neshama, shel ha'oisius kiniskalel, of the letters. The kavana zu, and he says, when we have this kavana, and it could be a kavana, before you start davening, before I start davening, take 30 seconds. Remember, you have a nefesh, a ruach, and a neshama, action, speech, and thought. And you intend in davening now to do your best, and we're going to learn from Rebbe Nachman later that it's very hard to do this, and we're going to see, that's the next part of the teaching, which either we'll get to today or we'll carry on next week. But you intend, and you express your yearning and your desire to bring all of you into your davening. Mamish, all of you. Not just your mindless action, just, your mouth moving, that's just nefesh. No, but to be conscious that you're speaking. Right? Mamish speech, not just mindless flapping of lips. You're mamish speaking. That's ruach and neshama. You are speaking what you're thinking. You're expressing yourself consciously through tefillah. Says the Meor VaShemesh, v'kavana zu oila al kol hakavanas. This is deeper, this is more exalted than any of the Kavvanos of the Arizal, of the Rashash. This is the highest Kavana there is. Shleimus, Tmimus, Tam v'nishlam. Simple, it's complete. Mamish complete. So here's a little story. The Rebbe Nachman brings us down in Sichos HaRan, where he says the following: Rosh Hashanah Achrain, on the very last Rosh Hashanah of Rebbe Nachman's life. A lot to say about that Rosh Hashanah. Every detail is described in mamish, the specifics of what took place that Rosh Hashanah in Uman, the last Rosh Hashanah of Rebbe Nachman's life. So Ye'etzlei Nechtoi HaChacham Kemar Yisrael Ben Chasane HaNagid Marina Rav Yitzchak Isaac Mikrimenchak. Spending Rosh Hashanah by Rebbe Nachman was his grandson, who was called Yisrael, presumably named after the Baal Shem, Yisrael. The son of his son-in-law, this Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Mikrimenchak, is Rebbe Nachman's son-in-law. V'nechtoi, and this boy Yisrael Hayadai Nar Katan, was still a very little boy, Shalish Arba Shanim, just a little kid. It's Yadua, Rebbe Nachman suffered terribly from tuberculosis for the latter part of his life, and it intensified it to unimaginable measure in that final tekufa, right at the end, because Rosh Hashanah was right at the end. He was Niftar Chol Hamoed Sukkos, fourth night, the night of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Rebbe Nachman was very ill, very, very, very deathly ill. It was at the very end of his life. Rebbe Nachman was sitting or laying, probably laying with his Hasidim around, and his grandson was there too. So Rebbe Nachman said, Yisrael, referring to his grandson, Yisrael, Hispal alayla Hashem Yisbarach sha'ashav li b'riyusi. He said, please daven to Hashem that I should regain my strength. Heishiv, so this little boy, 3 or 4, Heishiv, he answered, Tein li hazegrol shalcha. He said, give me your watch, Vaspal alecha, and I'll daven for you. He said, you give me something, I'll give you something. So, Anu Rabbeinu's Chana Racha, so Rebbe Nachman made a joke, right? Harry Isem, Shekvar Gutter Yid. Rebbe Nachman says he's already a Rebbe. This little 3-year-old, Skavalt, he's already a Rebbe. Right? Because this is what the Rebbes did. They took a pidyon, you give me a donation, and then I'll daven for you. So he said he's already an Admar. So Rebbe Nachman had his humor till the end. Vinas anlai. And this wraps up, nicely what we said earlier about the watch, right? There's something special about a watch and tefillah, that mashal that we use. V'nasan layer, Rebbe Nachman took off his watch and he gave it to him. V'lakach anar hazegral, and the little 3-year-old, this 4-year-old little boy, took the watch, v'halach loy, and he went to a corner. V'amar b'zeh alashen, and he said like this: God, las der Zayda sein gesund. Let my Zayda, let my grandfather be well. Hashem, hanach sha'asa b'yeh bari. Just let my grandfather be healthy. So some of the people there started laughing. Not because they were making fun, but it was just cute. They started smiling. They started laughing. So Rebbe Nachman got very serious and he said, This is how you daven. Is there any way? Is there any other way to daven than this? This is the way to daven. B'pshitus gamor, with total simplicity, ketina klifnei aviv, like a little boy davens or speaks to his father. Kasher yadaber ish al re'eyu, like one man speaks to his friend. Very powerful story. Very, very, but there are a lot of different angles and facets of this story. But what it means is very simple. We can turn Yiddishkeit into like a ritualistic, like complicated, convoluted thing. And maybe there's place for that. Yiddishkeit is very deep. Tefillah is very deep. The Kavvanos of the Arizal are very deep. The Kavvanos of the Rashash. It's a whole world. It's a whole universe. But at the end of the day, like Rebbe Nachman says on the Likutei Moharan, Achar kol ha-chachmas, like, okay, fine, there are chachmas, but after all of that, like the bottom line, in Rebbe Nachman's lashon there is Achar kol ha-chachmas shaloi lios chacham klal. After it all, simplicity. Simplicity is the highest thing there is. Simple. I want to build a relationship with Hashem. Simple. Kadosh Baruch Hu is my Father. I need something. Hashem listens to me. He wants to see me. In fact, He wants to see me so much that He gave me 3 opportunities a day to see Him. And He told me through His tzaddikim that I can contact Him whenever I want in my own language. That's called hispoidus. I could speak to Him the whole day. Like Rabbi Yochanan says, Halavai sha'adam yispal kol hayom kulei, right? Halavai, a person should always be in a state of tefillah the whole day. And I communicate with Him in no less plain and real a way as I communicate with the person sitting next to me, who He created. He's at least as real to me as that. And in a way of total simplicity, without any sophisticated ideas or intentions, pashut, I try to be present in that relationship. Because it means something to me. Because it means something to me. Kasher yadaber ish al re'ehu. So this is just a couple of parenthetic insights on the beginning of Sichos HaRan Ayin Hey A, because it's not the whole teaching, it's just the beginning. And now let's read a little bit further, and next week we'll carry on with Ayin Hey Be'ezus Hashem. Rebbe Nachman made fun, or he criticized those who said that you don't need to really put much effort into tefillah. Just tefillah is not so important. You go, you daven, you go out. No. He says you need to compel yourself. You need to mamash work on it. You got to daven with energy. It's got to be with energy, with fire. To put yourself, all of you, into the words of tefillah. Which we learned about in last week's shiur. If a person gets distracting thoughts coming at us, like we learned last week at length, just ignore it. Not focus on it at all. Ragyasa es shaloi. We were medayik last time. Shaloi, what you really want to do. Like Rebbe Nachman said, Ravas machshavas belev ish. Even when a person's distracted with so many different thoughts, ba'atzas Hashem hisakum. Hashem knows you're doing you. You know that's something else. It's an external force. It's not you. You're davening, and also somebody's distracting you. It happens to be in your own head, but it's somebody else. You do you. Ragyasa es shaloi. The yispal kedarkoi. Continue davening. Bi'ayashkiach klal shom bilbul. Don't focus and don't become discouraged and don't become upset at yourself and don't become angry because of any confusing experience that you're having. You just carry on. Don't focus on them, which we've already learned both in Sichos HaRan and in Likutei Moharan. Then Rebbe Nachman says a very encouraging and interesting thing. He says, in fact, it is impossible for a person to daven the entire tefillah from beginning to end with total kavana, at least for most people. I'm sure big tzaddikim, I'm sure Rebbe Nachman davened with kavana, right? The Bavitcher Rebbe davened with kavana, and the Chida, and the Ar Chaim HaKadosh, and the Ben Ish Chai, and the Baal Shem HaKadosh, and all the tzaddik, the Vilna Gaon, everybody, they davened b'kavana. Rebbe Nachman says for sort of simple people, so to speak, it's impossible to really accomplish that. He says, at the end of the day, just take stock of what the reality is. He says nobody keeps kavana from the beginning all the way to the end throughout. It's very rare. Usually you have snatches and then you fall out of it. You pop back in. Okay, now you have a strong kavana again, and then it goes in and out like this: bracha to bracha, pasuk to pasuk, psuk to zimra. She'echad aimer ketairos bekavana. There are some people that they feel very connected to the ketairos, and then they read it out of the ksav, like written properly. Echad aimer psuk to zimra bekavana. Another person says psuk to zimra with a lot of force, and then birchas kriyas start, and you fall out of that. So Rebbe Nachman says, "V'reisi b'ksav of Torah al zeh." Rebbe Nachman had a Torah about this. But he says I didn't merit to record it. So he spoke about this elsewhere. But whatever I do remember from there, from the Heilige Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, whose night and day is tonight and tomorrow. What a privilege to be mishtatif in that hilula, to try as whatever way that we can, to be a part of it, to go to an event, to be mechabed the tzaddik. The Gemara says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is boi bi'akrusa de tzaddikaya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to honor his tzaddikim. He gets big pleasure from that. It's a big inyan. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Reb Shimon over here, the Heilige Reb Shimon is actually a Meron. Is that the case? Not a Meron yet. You're mamash a Meron. Gewalt. The Heilige Reb Shimon. Tarti mashma, I mean both of them, right? So to be mechabed the tzaddikim, to be a part of that. So it says in the Zohar Kadosh, the ismarid yadayin, the ismarid raklayin. There are those among our nation who are called the masters of the hands, and there are those that are called the masters of the feet. There are different kinds of yidden that have their own expertise, their own inyan, their own part to play. We saw Aleph Havdalah, we saw just this past weekend, right? The coronation of King Charles III over here in the UK. It was a very, very big deal. And just watching the parade, you see all different kinds of soldiers, and each one has their part, and they're not jealous of the other ones, and they're not fighting with the other one. They're all part of one army, and they have their place. And that says how it is with Yidden. It's just so remarkable. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a mosaic of forces. We're his army. It's unbelievable. So he says, Zebachina Hanal. This is how it works with tefillah. Every person has their chelik in tefillah that they are going to daven with kavana. They feel connected to it. That's their part of tefillah. Even though, of course, all of us are shaykh to the whole tefillah, and we shouldn't use this as an excuse, and we shouldn't come to justify focusing on one part and then spacing out the rest because, that's not my thing. No, all of us are shaykh to all of tefillah, and all of us should try to work on getting to the level where we could be mechaven more and more and more. But al kain al yipol lev adam b'ra'oser shezachal espal ksas b'kavana eza chelik me'atfilu pesayim nifsak ve'eni yachal oil espal karei b'shamayfen. He says, let a person not become discouraged. When you've been having kavana in Psukah de Zimra, and then just something happens, and all of a sudden after Baruch Hu, you sit down and just like, boom, like what happened here? Says the Rebbe, that's normal. Kizah muchrach, that this happens. You just carry on davening in the simple way that we said. B'pshitas, saying the words, having in mind, and the feeling or the lack thereof, that's out of our control. We do what we need to do. And he says, even though sometimes a person is mamish toiling and he cannot daven with kavana at all. Don't become discouraged. Because this is the main thing, says Rebbe Nachman, that I want to get across to you. Never ever become discouraged. Things happen in life. You reframe it. You understand that it's part of the process. It's part of the story that Hashem is telling through me. All that I can do is try my best. That's what I can do. Things happen out of my control, and I know that I tried as much as I can, and then I got blindsided. It was something that was out of left field. It was beyond my capacity. I felt compelled, forced, etc. We don't become discouraged. Afilu yaver love ma. No matter what goes on in your life. And even if a person feels that they can't daven at all. So push yourself. Don't come with expectations to tefillah. It's got to be like this. I got to feel this. I got to, have such deep kavana. No. We begin with just the simple thing. Hashem, ani avducha b'namasecha. You told me to come to Shachris. I'm coming to Shachris. These are the words of the Anshe Knesset Gdoila. I believe that just in saying them simply and having just the simplest intention in mind, like the watch mashal, already it's changing the whole world. I come with tmimus. Just read the words like a kid, like a child, like Rebbe Nachman's grandson. What was his name? Rebbe Nachman's grandson, Yisrael. Simple. And then you should just carry on, just saying the words simply, and be happy about that. Not in a way of discouragement. Oh, look how I missed out on this tefillah, or whatever. I have to say the words. I'm not going to just close the siddur and leave shul. No. Be content with that. Pshitos is not so simple. Something great is being accomplished here, even if we're not aware of it. From just doing this and having this in mind and being aware of this while we're davening, so that when you feel that you get to a point in your tefillah where something shifted and you lost that fire and that energy and that excitement and that passion that you had maybe 2 paragraphs ago, and something changed in Shemana Esrei and all of a sudden you just don't feel it anymore, carry on simply. Remember that carrying on simply is not simple. It's very deep. It's mamish deep. It's beyond deep. I'm showing up. I'm bringing my nefesh, ruach, and neshama. I'm here, and I'm invested into trying to do this properly. Says the Rebbe, Al piroi v'yiske barachme v'yizbarach le'isar mizeh. This itself will awaken you. This itself will bring your heart back into it. By carrying on with the right perspective and not giving up and not becoming discouraged and not beating yourself up, looking down on your tefillah. No, remember, always listen to your tefillahs. It's very deep. Your tefillahs are worth listening to. If you don't believe that your tefillahs are worth listening to for you, then why should you believe that Hashem thinks that your tefillahs are worth listening to? It starts with us valuing it. Listening to the words coming out of our mouths. Hashmi'ini es koilech. Hashem says, let me hear your voice. Ki koilech arev. Your voice is sweet. And Rebbe Nachman's telling all of us to believe that too. We also can listen to the voice that's coming out of our throats, the words that are coming out of our mouths. Hashmi'ini es koilech. I believe it, Ribbon Shalom. Ki koilech arev. I believe that my words are precious. I believe that my words matter. I believe that the force that a Jew in 2023 has to push against in order to get out of bed and get to davening, or to open up a siddur, or to believe that there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu worth davening to. I mean, it's infinite how powerful that is. So it's worth listening to. And I believe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you also believe, Ki koili arev, that my voice is sweet and worth listening to. So you carry on, and you'll just get awakened on your own. Says the Rebbe, don't come to tefillah and say, okay, well, listen, so I won't try to have kavanah at all. I'm just going to say the words and hopefully it'll happen. Says the Rebbe, no, you got to do yours with hishtadlus. You got to do try and invest as much as you can your kavanah, your koyach into the tefillah. In the middle of davening, if you feel that you lost it, this is the eitzah. Pshitos, simplicity, the simple meaning of the words. Nefesh, ruach, neshama activates the nekudas, the ta'amim, the tagim. And this brings us to a place of shleimus in our tefillah, but in a simple way, without getting stuck in the details and missing the ultimate point, which is dveikus, which is to let Hashem into our lives, to build a conscious relationship with our Father in heaven. We should be zeicha to daven like Yisrael, to daven like this grandson of Rebbe Nachman, this little 3-year-old boy, to daven with pshitas, tmimas, and to believe in our tefillah, to believe in it. That's the whole Lag BaOmer is just about that. Lag BaOmer, Rebbe Nachman, the Rashbi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he mamish believed in every yid. He believed in every yid. Rashbi is Rosh Tevis, B'Shvil Yisrael Shenikru Ureishis. He reminds HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no, this is the Yid that you created the world for. B'Shvil Yisrael Shenikru Ureishis. Things happen in our lives along the way. Things devolve, things fall apart. But we have the Nekudas Harashis inside of us. There's that untainted beginning. It's still there. It's accessible. Rabbi Shimon is Or Mufla Malo Kav Yorek Mechadish Chadashim. Rabbi Shimon gives us the energy to start fresh, to start again, to start anew, to believe in ourselves, to believe in our tefillah. Shibazaycha to all the hashpais of this great day.